This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thank you, Josh, for the warm introduction. So this week's Parsha talks about the house of Abraham and Sarah. I was never there, but I think this Shabbos, staying in the Morham house, I get a little flavor for what it must have been like. The Ramah tells us, Motzoi Shabbos, there's an Indian to mention Eliyahu Hanavi. Because Eliyahu cannot come on Friday, can't come on Shabbos. The first opportunity for Eliyahu to come is Motzoi Shabbos. And therefore, we speak about Eliyahu, Motzoi Shabbos, it's his first opportunity to come. So the closest we could come to that is speaking about the Geula, which is very much connected to Parshas Vayera and to the Akeida. What I'd like to present to you this evening is what I consider a revolutionary understanding of the Akeida, but at the same time, the most simple interpretation of the Akeida. If you come to me tonight and you said, obviously that's what it's all about, that will bring me the greatest nachas. Although I do think it's quite innovative, novel, and yet simple at the same time. I want to re-examine the Akeida. Vahi achar hadvarim ha'ela v'alekim nisa es Abraham. After these matters, and Hashem tested Abraham. The obvious question is, when Hashem tested Abraham? Abraham gets to go home afterwards, have a Shabbos Suda, have some cholent, and call it a day. Yitzchak is the one who is in Olam HaEmes. If anything, it's Yitzchak. V'alekim nisa es Yitzchak, the obvious kasha. Why v'alekim nisa es Abraham? Why not v'alekim nisa es Yitzchak? Everyone asks the question. I wanted to find a Rishain. It's already found in the Rishainim. The Perush HaTorah for the Bali HaToisvis quotes Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid asks, hey, Yitzchak's not a kid, he's 36 years old, maybe it should say 37. Why is it a test for Abraham? It should be a test for Yitzchak, or at the very least, V'alekim nisa es Abraham v'es Yitzchak. Vayomer kachno es bincha es yechidcha asher ahavta es Yitzchak. Take your son. So Abraham says, I have two. As Yechidcha, your only son. Abraham says, they're both only to their mother. Asher ahavta, the one that you love. I love both. Es Yitzchak. That's how Rashi learns. In fact, Rashi, so why didn't Hashem just say, Kachna es Yitzchak? So Rashi says, well, Hashem didn't want to scare him. If Hashem would say, Kachna es Yitzchak, he might get so startled and rattled, then maybe he would make a rash decision, and it might not have been B'yishav Hadas. So, that's how Rashi interprets it. Although, maybe we could interpret it differently based on what we're going to learn about the Akeida. Here's the big kasha. Vayashkim Abraham Aboiker. Abraham wakes up early in the morning. Vayachavosh es chamoiro. He saddles his donkey. Vayikach eshnei na'arav ita. He takes his two lads. Who are the two lads of Abraham? Zakt Rashi, Yishmael and Eliezer. An Adam Chashav travels with two people. What in the world is going on? Eliezer I get. Eliezer is Abraham's faithful servant. Yishmael? What in the world is Yishmael doing there? Yishmael was just kicked out of the house. Didn't Sarah just say, Garesh as Ben Ha'amazis, get out of here! Kick him out! And Vayir Avram Ma'oid. Avram was very disturbed that he has to send out Yishmael. Hashem said, don't worry. Al teir beinecha al nar al masacha. Don't be upset. He's a bad guy. Get him out. And the pasuk says, if you look at number 5, where did Yishmael go? V'atoim ali Avram, Goresh ha'ama hazois ve'espina. Kick him out of the house. Vayeshev b'midbar paran. He went to the desert. He went to Saudi Arabia. I don't know where he went. He went to Midbar Paran. So Frek Toisvis, Yishmael mehechan balasham. Where did Yishmael come from? Yishmael wasn't there. Yishmael was thrown out. He was kicked out. He's in Midbar Paran. So when Hashem said, Kachna es binchas yichidcha, and Avram said I had two kids, no, he didn't. Yishmael's long gone. And what does the pasuk mean? Vayikach eshnei na'arav. Eliezer, yeah, Yishmael's out of the house. What's going on in the story? So Taisa says, you have to say, it was visiting day. It was visiting day. I know, in America, in camp, you send your kid to camp for 2 months, but you have to go like every Sunday, drive up to the mountains, twice in the summer, for 3 hours to visit the kid. It was visiting day. Let's make a cheshbon. Yishmael was 37. Yitzchak was 37 years old by the Akeida. When was Yishmael kicked out of the house? Very possibly, it says, Vayar Sarah saw Yishmael was mitzachek. It says that right after Yitzchak was 2 years old. I don't have a better estimate. Yishmael was out of the house for the last 35 years. Says Tosfos, he was out of the house for 35 years. In those 35 years, he was only in Abraham's house one more time. When? The night of the Akeida. So to me, this can't be a coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence that Yishmael was kicked out of the house, and he was only in Abraham. In those 35 years, he was only in the house one night. And the night that he was in the house happened to be the night of the nevuah of Kachna es bincha es yichidcha asher ahavta es Yitzchak. Everything's good? Hakol b'seder? Should I start over? Kachna es bincha es yichidcha. Louder even. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, he's going to speak as loud as he can.
Maybe put the stand here. Put the stand here.
Over here?
Use that stand, mate.
Okay.
Use that stand.
Now the door's going to close. Who does he belong to? Okay. Yeah. So according to Tosfos, Yishmael is long out of the house. He's been out of the house since he's 2 years old. And in 35 years, Yishmael happens to be in the house one night. What night was it? The night of the Akeida. I don't think it was a coincidence that Yishmael happened to be in the house the night of the Akeida. Vayomer Abraham el Na'arav. Abraham says to his two lads, Shavu lachem poi im hachamar. You guys stay with the donkey. Vani v'hanar nelcha ad koi. And me and my kid, we're going ad koi. V'nishtachave v'noshuv aleichem. Says the Gemara in Kedushin Nav Samaches. What do you mean Shavu lachem poi im hachamar? Chazal tell us, Am hadoime lechamar, that Ben Yisrael haba min hashivcha einoi miyuchas achrav. In other words, we are saying that Yishmael has a din of a chamar. Why does Yishmael have a din of a chamar? We learn from here that the son of a Yisrael who comes from a shivcha is not connected to the father. In other words, this is the makar that if the mother is not Jewish, the kid has the halachic status of a donkey. Now, how Jewish is a donkey? Donkeys are really not that very Jewish, and therefore neither is someone who has a non-Jewish mother. And the Beis Halevi asks, this is a very important halacha to know, that if the mother is not Jewish, the kid is not Jewish. But is this really the time? Is it really critical to teach me this halacha at this moment in time, that Yishmael has a din of a chamar? There are other opportunities. We could say it when he's born. We could say it when he became bar mitzvah, at his bris milah. Why is the Torah dafka telling me now, the drasha of Am hadoim el chamar, that haba from a shivcha has a status of a chamar? Here's another diuk which really opened up my eyes to a new understanding of the Akeida. So Avraham Avinu is about to shech Yitzchak, and at the last moment, the Mal says, "Don't do it! Don't do it! Don't worry, Hashem doesn't want you to do it, and because you're willing to do it, ki varech avarechecha v'harba arbe zaracha kechoichvei Hashemayim. I'm going to increase your children like the stars. V'chachil asher asas hayam v'yirash zaracha ishar oyevav." And your children will inherit the gates oyevav of their enemies. That word was a clue for me. Enemies, there are two words for enemies in the Chumash. There's an oyev and there's a saineh. And these two words are very specific words, and they have a very specific connotation. There is one pasuk that uses both words, Oyev and Soinei, in Parshas Nitzavim, Perek Lamed, pasuk Zayin, number 10. V'nosan Hashem Elokecha, and Hashem will place is Kol Ha'oloi Sa'ela, all of these curses, Alo Yevecha, V'al Soineecha, on your Oyevim and on your Soinim, Asher Ridafucha, that pursue you. Comes Rabbeinu Bechaye, and Rabbeinu Bechaye says, who are your Oyevim and who are your Soinim? Says Rabbeinu Bechaye, Oyevecha is Yishmael. Soinecha is Esav. How do we know Oyevecha is Yishmael? Because the Navi says, Tarum Yadchal Tzarechav Chol Oyevecha Yikaresu, in reference to Yishmael. And these are the two nations that from time immemorial have subjugated us. Yishmael and Esav. And there's a debate. The Rambam, Rabbeinu Bechaye, the Ramban. Who's worse, Esav or Yishmael? We spoke about it last night. But now we're going to speak about who is our Oyev and who is our Soinei. The Ramban in the Sefer HaVikuach learns differently than this Rabbeinu Bechaye. But the Vilna Gaon and Rabbeinu Bechaye learn as follows. Oyev is Yishmael, Soinei is Esav. By the way, what does Rashi say? Halacha biyadua Esav, Soinei liYaakov. I once heard somebody say it's Halacha l'Moshe Misinai. No, not Halacha l'Moshe Misinai. Halacha biyadua. Halacha biyadua Esav Soinei. Yishmael therefore is the Oyev. Says Rabbeinu Bechaye, Oyev is worse than a Soinei. You know why they're called an Oyev? Because the Soinei hates you and he's going to harm you, but there is some element of Rachamim. The Oyev, you're going to cry out, Oy va'avoy. Okay. So let's just think about the aftermath of the Akeida. And the aftermath of the Akeida, the Malach says, V'yirash zaracha eshar oyevav, meaning, you will conquest and conquer Yishmael. Oh, so to me this opened up the whole thing. That means somehow the Akeida is the eternal victory of Klal Yisrael over Yishmael. You know why we will overcome Yishmael? As a result of the Akeida. So why is that? Why is the Akeida the victory over Yishmael? That's what the Psukim seem to say black and white. The Malach comes, oh, you did the Akeida, the Yirash, Zaracha, Eis, Shar, Oyevav. Now you will defeat Yishmael. So there's a little known Rashi that gets overlooked as an introduction to the Akeida. Achar hadvarim ha'eles. I remember there was a kid, he took a farher. So in the yeshiva that I come from, Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim, so the mahalach of learning is, don't tell me Pilpo, don't tell me Reb Chaim, Reb Shimon. First get the first know what the Gemara is talking about. Get the shak of the know the Gemara's kasha, know the Gemara's teretz. You have Tosfos' kasha, you have Tosfos' teretz. Now how does the Gemara read according to Tosfos? Have the Gemara klar. The shak of the tarya. So remember, so a kid takes a farher, so he starts reading the Gemara. Hashta da'amrid, now that you said this, so Rashi says, now that you said what? I don't know, I didn't prepare that part, I just started from... So, achar hadvarim ha'ela, after these things, Kimni says, after what? So Rashi says, in the Yeshomrim, Yishmael comes to Yitzchak and he says, yeah, you're mispar on me. You had bris milah 8 days old. I had bris milah 13 years old. You're a moiser nefesh. You're not a moiser nefesh. You have no choice. You didn't think about it. You had no bechira. I was 13 years old. I risked my entire life to have a bris milah. Yitzchak said, you're going to scare me with one Ever Echarat Mi'areni. If the Rebbeinu Shalom would tell me, shecht yourself, I would do it. So what do we learn from here? That there was an introductory conversation before the Akeida. That Yitzchak and Yishmael were battling it out. And Yishmael said, I'm the real Moiser Nefesh here. I'm the real Oved Hashem. I'm the real heir to Avraham Avinu. Because how do you demonstrate Avodas Hashem Mesiras Nefesh? I did it at 13. You did it when you were 8 days old. So Yitzchak says, get lost. If Hashem would tell me to shech my whole self, I would do it. So I have a kasha for you. And a teretz for you. Halekim Nisa es Yitzchak. They can't say Halekim Nisa es Yitzchak. It's not a test. Yitzchak asked for it. He asked us, he said, if the Rebbeinu Shalom would tell me, it's an eder. So Hashem said, okay, V'lekim nisas Abraham. The test is on Abraham. Yitzchak took it upon himself. Yitzchak made a declaration. I'm ready. Okay, so we're good, ready. Yitzchak we have down. There's no lekim nisas Yitzchak. If Yitzchak never would have offered it, imagine somebody says, I pledge $1 million to the shul. So now it's in his son. He did it already. It's a done deal. He said he's going to do it. So we're done with Yitzchak. Yitzchak, we know he's going to do it. The test is on Abraham. Hashem could have said, okay, Yitzchak, you're a big talker, so go do it. Abraham could have nothing to do with it. The Nisayon is on Abraham, not on Yitzchak. Yitzchak already offered. But Yitzchak made the offer as a battle with Yishmael. They are now wagering, they're now battling. Who is the emes dika moiser nefesh and yarei shamayim? Is it Yishmael had the milah at 13? Or is it Yitzchak who's willing to be moiser his entire guf for the Rebbeinu Shalom? There's another very interesting point over here that also opens up the topic, and we'll try to tie it together. In between this conversation, between Yitzchak and Yishmael said, I'm the real Oved Hashem, I'm the real heir to Avram Avinu, I had milah at 13. So Yitzchak says, no, if Hashem would tell me to be a mizabeach myself, I would do it. So you would expect immediately it to say, Achar Adram Ha'elav Elikim Nisas Abraham. It doesn't. There's a story in between. The covenant with Avimelech, Melech Plishtim. There are a few, right? There are a lot of psukim in between. So if, according to Rashi, the Achar Hadvar Ma'ila is after the conversation between Yitzchak and Yishmael, so it should say immediately, Achar Hadvar Ma'ila v'kim nisas Abraham. But there's the whole episode of the Krisas Bris with Avimelech. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rabbi Yaakov says like this. Rabbi Yaakov says, we're starting to get very nervous over here. Because when Yishmael says, I'm the real Oved Hashem, what's he getting at? What he's getting at is, I want Eretz Yisrael, I want Har Habayis, this land is mine, I'm the Yoresh of Avraham Avinu. Fine. But what do you mean? But Sarah said, Goresh ben ha'ama hazois, ki lo yirash and zari. He's not going to inherit. But there's still a problem. You know what the problem is? Because Hashem tells Abraham, listen here, don't feel bad about Yishmael. Whatever Sarah says, listen to her. So basically Hashem is telling Abraham, just listen to your wife. So is Abraham really, belev shalem, banishing Yishmael as his heir? Or is he just doing an act of shalom bayis? Look, there are a lot of things we do because our wife tells us, and it doesn't necessarily mean this is what we want to do. I mean, there are people here tonight, their wife told them to come. Doesn't mean they came. So just because the Rebbeinu Shalom told Abraham, Goresh has been ha'ama hazois kiloyer, fine, that's what the Rebbeinu Shalom told me, to listen to Sarah. But in my heart of hearts, he's beni, he's yechidi, asher ahavti. And if that's the case, he has claims to Eretz Yisrael. He has claims to be the heir of Abraham, as an Oved Hashem, as a Moiser Nefesh. So the introduction is as follows, says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. The Zohar says, why does Yishmael have a zechus in Eretz Yisrael? The zechus bris milah. They do bris milah, they do Mesiras Nefesh, they have rights to Eretz Yisrael. They have a zechus to be there, for now. Here's the Hakdama. The Hakdama is, Abraham makes a bris with Avimelech, Melech Plishtim, and he says, you know what, I'm giving you part of Eretz Yisrael. Stay in the Gaza. Stay in Eretz Yisrael, but what about bris milah? Do you know what are Plishtim called in Nevi'im? Every time we talk about a Plishti, we use a certain word. You know what word we use? Arelim, 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 Arelim. They're the one ummah that is the quintessential Arel. They are known to be Arelim. Arelos refers to Plishtim. So what are they doing in Eretz Yisrael then? If you have to have Zechus Milah, so the Hakdama to the Akeida is, don't get too nervous. Don't get too nervous if Yitzchak is not going to pull through and defeat Yishmael, and you're going to think, well, Yishmael is going to then keep Eretz Yisrael because he has Milah. Because at the end of the day, you don't really need Milah to get Eretz Yisrael. Look at the Plishtim, they're the ultimate Arelim, and Avram gave them some Eretz Yisrael. But now we're ready for the big battle. Because in the mind of Abraham, he loves Yishmael. Yishmael is his son. He says, I have two sons. Yishmael is his only son. He says, I have two only sons. He loves him. Perhaps we could explain that the entire purpose of the Akeida was Rebbeinu Shalom is basically declaring for all time that Yishmael has no connection to Avraham, no connection to Klal Yisrael, no connection to the Avos, no connection to Eretz Yisrael, and no connection to Har HaBayis. He is not Avraham's son. So you know what the Rebbeinu Shalom does? He makes an incredible miracle. Yishmael is out of the house for 35 years. All of a sudden, Hashem is Masavev Sibuvim, that one night in the history of Yishmael, he comes back to Avraham's house. And that night, Pinklach, Hashem knocks on Avraham's door. Kachna is bincha. So Avram thinks in his mind, what's going on here? Yishmael hasn't been here in 35 years. Probably, when the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Kachna is bincha, he must be Yishmael. If he meant Yitzchak, he had 35 years to tell me. Why is he telling me tonight? It must be Yishmael, Tosfos says. But it's mamish pink fakir, just the opposite. What Hashem is showing Abraham is Abraham said, Hashem says, Kachna is bincha. Bincha is not Yishmael. Yechidcha is not Yishmael. Asher Ahavta is not Yishmael. It's Yitzchak. The tachlis of the Akeida is Avram. Don't think you just sent Yishmael out of the house because I told you, you're Shalom Bayis over here. There's not an Indian of Shalom Bayis. It's Goreshes ben Ha'ama Azois. Yishmael has no connection to you or the Har HaBayis. That the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, Bincha, Yechidcha, Ahavta is Yitzchak and not Yishmael. I don't want to hear you say Yishmael is Bincha. I don't want to hear you say is Yechidcha. I don't want to hear you say Ahavta. You know what I want to hear you say? Says the Medrash, Vayaras HaMakom Merachak. They saw the Shekhinah on the Har HaBayis, and Abraham turns to Yitzchak. You see? Yitzchak says Avada. And he turns to Yishmael and he says, you see? He says, see what? So Abraham says, you don't even see the Shekhinah. So that means you and the Chamar have something in common. Neither of you have any shaychus to Kedushas Har HaBayis. Shavu lachem payim hachamor. Hashem said, that's what I wanted. I don't want to hear you say bini. I don't want to hear you say chidi. I don't want to say ahavti. I want you to say about Yishmael, chamar. That's what he is. He's not related to you. He's not connected to you. That's why at this one answer Beis Halevi's kasha. That's why at this juncture in time, the Chazal darshan am hadoim el chamar. Abraham was being koiveya, not just a statement, a halacha. And halacha is the reality of the universe. That Yishmael is not connected, not to him and not to Har HaBayis. Hashem arranged that Yishmael should be home that day, so that Abraham should not. You see, if Yitzchak just would have done the Akeida, so it doesn't necessarily mean he's being victorious over Yishmael. He's being selected over Yishmael. In order to select, you have to have a choice. If you take vanilla ice cream, it doesn't mean you like it better if they didn't offer you chocolate. We only know you like it better if they're both available. Hashem said, I'm going to give you Yitzchak and Yishmael, and I'm going to tell you, Bincha, Yechidcha, Asher Ahavta is Yitzchak. And you know what you're going to say about Yishmael? Am hadoim el chamor. So after the Akeida, the Malach says, okay, you got it. V'yirash zarocha es shar oivav. Now Klal Yisrael has eternal rights over Yishmael. And it's amazing. After Lavan and Besuel give Rivka to Yitzchak, what do they say? What's the bracha? V'yir zarchei shar Sainav. Because now Yishmael's long gone. Now we have to deal with Esav. Esav, now we tell you, you should rule over Esav as well. The whole topic of the Akeida, the whole purpose of the Akeida, is to not for Klal Yisrael and Avram to think they're listening to Sarah, they're selecting Yitzchak, and they're rejecting Yishmael for eternity. It's interesting. I know it's a koila, but it's a point. It's an emistic point. The one thing the Yishmaelim changed in their holy book, Lahavdil, is the only thing they switch is they change the character of the Akeida from Yitzchak to Yishmael. Isn't it curious That's the one thing that they meddle with? No, because somehow, that the entire downfall of Yishmael came from the Akeida. So it's the biggest slap in the face. It's the biggest thorn in their side. The Akeida is what eternally causes Yishmael to be rejected. Okay, it's Matzah Shabbos. Let me tell you something. I can't help but tell this to you. So, in this week's Parsha, Sarah's married many years to Abraham. They don't have children. So Sarah says, maybe you want to marry Hagar. Give it a shot. So the pasuk says, number 16, Vayavo el Hagar, Vatahar, Vatera ki harasa, Vateka al gverta beinah. Immediately, Mibiyah Rishayna, Chazal say, Hagar was Nisaber. So Hagar turns to Sarah. He said, you're a hypocrite, you're a faker. All these years with Abraham and nothing, and me, look what a tzaddikus I am. I must have tremendous chusim. She conceived immediately, and she made fun of Sarah. She looked down on Sarah. She disparaged Sarah. So Sarah had tainus on Abraham. Chamasi Lecha. Why don't you stick up for me? How do you let her talk to me like this? So Abraham says, you're right. Hine shevchasech v'yadech, asi lo hatoy be'inoyech, v'te'aneha Sarai. Sarai took advantage of Hagar. She hurt Hagar. She insulted Hagar. She disparaged Hagar. Says the Ramban, mamish pachad. If you want to know why we suffer till today from Yishmael, you want to know why we hear frightening reports, chas v'shalom lo yaleinu, it's all because Sarah hurt the feelings of Hagar. Sarah abused Hagar. And Avram let her. Watch out, don't hurt anyone's feelings, even someone like Hagar. Because Sarah insulted Hagar, that's why she had a para Adam, and Yishmael tortures us until the end of time. That's the shita of the Ramban. Where the Ramban got this from, what the Makar in Chazal is, we don't know. But not all the Rishonim agree with the Ramban. Tosfos, the Riva, and the Abarbanel, they say it's not true. Because there's a shita of the Smag. The shita of the Smag is that if somebody hurts you monetarily, you're not allowed to get back at them. It's an Isser in the Torah, lo yisikaim. But if someone hurts your feelings, you're allowed to hurt them back. It's not nekama. Insult is too hard to control. That's the shita of the Smag. Whether we pass them like that, look in the Sefer Chavetz Chaim, there's a legitimate shita in the Rishonim. There's no Isser nekama by insult. Sarah was allowed to insult Hagar. She had to. That's, if somebody hurts you, you can't just keep your mouth closed, says the Smag. It's not within human capacity. How we paskin Lamaisa, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. Luckily, I'm not local. The Abarbanel also disagrees with the Ramban. The Ramban writes, look at number 21, because Ramban, Shesara chata b'zeh, v'gam Avraham, v'eina davar kain. It's not true. It's not true. So I came across an incredible thing. There was an Arizal I once saw quoted. So I figured it was just, the Kisvei Ari. I found it in a Rishain. The Chida quotes a Rishain. The Chida in the Maras Ha'ayin quotes a famous story that Yishai, towards the end of his life, he was getting nervous. Yishai, of course, knew the psak of the Bezin of Shmuel, that David is muter lavai bekal, that Moyavi v'loi Moyavis. That Rus was muter lavai bekal. That was the psak of the Bezin of Shmuel. However, and that was Boaz's psak. But Yishai started getting nervous. And he said, you know what? Maybe Doeg was right. And maybe all my children are psulim. So he told his wife, we've had a very nice marriage together. Have a nice day. And he told his shifcha, I'm going to marry you. And we're going to have a child who's going to be a ben shifcha, who's going to be an eved. And then I'm going to free it, and that will be mataher my children. The Arizal brings this down. Says the Chida, he found the Maisa in the Talmud of the Rashba, Rabbi Yaakov Sakili. They publish now Torah Chidusha Rabbi Yaakov Sakili. That's the story. And when David was born, what happens? A few months later, let's get the story. The Shifcha was a nice lady. So the Shivcha goes over to Eishes Yishai, and she says, I have to tell you, your husband made up with me, but I don't feel right about it. And the wife of Yishai took the clothing of the Shivcha, and unbeknownst to Yishai thought it was the Shivcha, and it turns out to be his wife. He never knew. 3 months later, Hukar Ubara, 3 months later he sees his wife is pregnant. The sons of Yishai said, mother was Mizana, obviously. Yishai said, don't talk about it, then you're psulim, then it's not going to be good for you. Now why that would affect them, I don't know, maybe Shidducha, I don't know. So, they kept their mouth closed. David was born, they paskened he's a mamzer. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. Muzar ha'yisi la'achai. They threw him to the dogs. Miyad kela v'chidasi. Not just the Arizal, now it's in the Rishayim. We don't even know at what point in time did Yishai realize that the kid is not a mamzer, but he's asad l'malchus Yisrael. I guess when Shmuel said he's the one, he must have known by then. Comes the Chida, he saw in the writings of the Ramah Mipano, one of the Italian Mekubalim, that who was the Shivcha of Yishai? The Shivcha of Yishai was the Gilgal of Hagar. And she came back to this world to be Masakin something. You know what she came back to the world to be Masakin? The fact that she spoke down to Sarah. The Pasuk says, Vatera ki harasa vatekal gevirta beina. Because Hagar spoke down to Sarah, so she had to come back and be Misakein, being machnia, submitting herself, humbling herself to Eishes Yishai, and that was her tikkun. Incredible. Who could know such a thing other than the Ramah Mipano? Ramah Mipano was one of the greatest Mekubalim. By the way, he had a different chain of Kabbalah. He was a Talmud of Rabbi Yisrael Saruk. Rabbi Yisrael Saruk, the Talmud of the Arizal, before Reb Chaim Vital. So I can't help but share with you the following thought. Friday night we spoke about, we have two Golosim. We have Golos Edom, we have Golos Yishmael. Esav is called the Shar. Yishmael is called the Chamar. Esav is called the Shar. He's called Parim Abirim, the fat cows. Yishmael is called the Chamar. What? Shavu lachem payim ha-Chamar. We have two Mashiachs, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef, the Gra writes, will take us out of Golos Edom. Yosef is called what? Shar. B'char shoyroi hadarloi. Mashiach ben David will take us out of Golos Yishmael. Why? Yishmael is called what? Chamar. David is called Ani v'roichev al Chamar. The Shar out of the Shar, the Chamar out of the Chamar. We said it Friday night. If you listen to the Shiurim, it's a pretty common theme. I can't help but think the following. If Hagar has to come back to this world, you think the only thing she has to come back to this world is to rectify the fact that she spoke down to Sarah? Yeah, Vada, that was a bad thing. I think there's another thing she has to come back to the world for. She brought into the world a Chamar. She brought into the world a Pera Adam. She brought into the world Golos Yishmael. So how is she going to rectify? How is Hagar going to rectify bringing the Chamar into the world? There's only one way. She is going to set up and be Meshadich, the Zivug of Yishai, with Eishes Yishai, to bring into the world Ani v'roichev Chamar, David HaMelech. Tafla v'fela. That Hagar came back to this world in the guise of Eishes, of the Shivchas Yishai. She brought into the world the antidote to Yishmael, David HaMelech, Malchus Beis David, the Ani v'roichev Chamar, to be moitzi us, to be matzel us from the Golos of the Chamar. So she was Masakein both in Yanim. She was Masakein, the Inyan that she spoke down to Sarah. She was Masakein, the Inyan she brought the Chamar into the world. So we'll end off, we said it last night. If you missed it, you'll hear it now. If you heard it, make believe you didn't. The Gemara says at the end of Makkos that the Tanoim came to the Harabayas. Tanoim came to the Harabayas and they see the Shualim Hilchulbai and they're crying. And Rabbi Kiva was laughing. So he pointed out from the Talmud of Rabbi Chaim Vital, Rabbi Yamin Vitali, What was Rabbi Akiva laughing about? You know what Rabbi Akiva is laughing about? Shualim is gematria Yishmael. It's almost even oisi Yishmael, off by one aleph. Shualim is numerical value Yishmael. When you see the Yishmaelim on the Harabayas, it's the biggest joke in the world. You know how much they're masig of the Harabayas? You know what their appreciation of the Harabayas is? When Abraham says to Yishmael, you see what's on the Harabayas? Yishmael says, see what? So Abraham says, in Cain, you and the Chamar are the same. Yishmael has no shaykhs to the Harabayas. They're unconnected to Harabayas, unconnected to Avraham Avinu. They're not Ben Avraham, they're not the Ben Yachid, and they're not a child that Avraham loves. You know what Avraham had to say about Yishmael? He's a Chamar. But one thing we know is the Baal HaTurim says, the end of Chayesara, the beginning of Taldos, the end of Chayesara is Apnei Kol Echav Nafal. When you see those Shualim on the Harabayas, then Yishmael will have his downfall. And immediately after the downfall of Yishmael is Apnei Kol Echav Nafal Ve'ela Taldos Yitzchak. We're living through it. We're seeing the ascendancy of Yishmael. We're seeing them clamoring for the Harabayas, but we know it's an empty taina. We know it's worthless. The Akeida is what gives us the right, the Yirash Saracha Eshar Oyevav. That's how we overcome Yishmael. May we be zoicha to see the day where all the Shualim are removed from the Harabayas. Be zoicha to claim once and for all the Zuchus of the Akeida. And Mirz Hashem, we should be zoicha, Eliyahu Hanavi should be mevasaras, V'soros Toivos, Yeshuos, V'nachamos, the coming, Mashiach ben David, the Ani V'roicha V'achamar. Thank you everyone for listening. Agutavach. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.